Hi everybody, welcome to Live Blogger. I have combined all the videos in our responsive tabs series into this single long video so that it's easy for you to follow. Now in this video we are basically going to create this responsive tabs using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. And here we can see we have these 3 tab headings, and if I click on any of these tab headings, we have the content of that tab displayed over here, and it is also completely responsive. And later I'll show you how to make this CSS based, so we'll just remove all the JavaScript and make all of this work using CSS. And then in the end I will also show you how to add this design to your Blogger website. And I will leave the link of the source code in the description of this video, so you can just go ahead and copy and paste the code to your websites. Alright, so let's get started. In this video, we will start designing this responsive tabs using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So here we can see we have these 3 tabs over here, and we have the content inside the tab displayed over here. And if I click on the second tab, we have the content of that tab displayed over here. And you can add anything you want over here as the content. You can add images, videos, list or whatever you want. And then we have another tab over here called comments, and then we have the content of the comments displayed over here. And this is also responsive, so if I decrease the width of the screen, and if you cross this breakpoint, we can see that all the tabs are displayed in full width. And if you decrease the width even more, we have smaller headings for the content, and also the font size of these are decreased. So this is what we're going to design in this video. Now in the first video we'll just design it using HTML and CSS, and in the next video I'll show you how to add JavaScript to add the functionality of these tabs. So let's get started. Right here I have created this folder called responsive tabs, and I just opened it with VS Code. And I also have this folder called images for this image right here. And let's go ahead and start by creating the necessary files. So let's click on new file, and let's create an HTML file. Let's name it index.html. And now let's create a CSS file. Let's name it style.css. And let's also create a JavaScript file. Let's name it main.js. Now let's start with the index.html file. Now in VS Code you have the shortcut where you can just press exclamation and press tab, and you will have this basic HTML5 code. Alright, let's link our CSS over here. So let's tap link, and in the href I'll just tap style or CSS. And here in the body I'll just link the JavaScript file. So I'll just tap script, and in the src I'll just tap main.js. Alright, let's start with the markup of the tabs. Now the first thing we will do is we'll create a container division to hold everything. So let's give it a class of tabs container, and in that we will create a division with the class of tab heading container for all these tabs over here. So let's tap tab heading container, and in that we'll have divisions with the class of tab heading, and in that we need to have this icon and this text. So for the icon we're going to use hero icons. Right here I'm in heroicons.com, and let's go ahead and search for bookmarks. So here let's type bookmark, and here we have the icon. So let's click on copy SVG. Let's go back and paste it over here. First of all, let's create a container division. So let's create a division with the class of icon, and in that I'll just paste the SVG. And after that we need to type the text. So let's go outside this division, and let's type bookmarks. Right now we need to create another tab heading division. So let's create a division with the class of tab heading, and let's create a division for the icon. Right now let's go back to hero icons, and we need to search for this icon right here. Now for that we can just type chart, and here we can see this is the icon. So let's click on copy SVG, and let's go back and paste it over here. And after this division we need to type the text. So let's tap analytics, and let's create one more tab heading. So let's tap tab heading, and let's create an icon division, and the next icon we need to have is this comments icon over here. So let's search for comments. We have this icon right here. So let's click on copy SVG, and let's paste it over here inside the icon division. And after that we need to have the text, which is comments. Alright, that's it with the tab heading container. Now let's create the content of the tabs. So for that let's go outside this division, and let's create a division with the class of tab content container. And in that, for each of the content, let's create a division with the class of tab content. And here let's create a heading, and I'll just type bookmarks. And let's create a division with the class of content. And here we'll just add all the content that we want. So I'll just copy this text, and let's create a paragraph, and I'll just paste it over here. Now we want the first tab content to be displayed at the beginning, so here we'll just add a class of active. So when we have the active class, we will display the content. And here also for the tab heading, for the first one, let's add a class of active. Or let's scroll down and let's create one more tab content. So I'll just copy this and let's paste it 2 more times. And for the second one, let's type analytics. And for the content, we can add an image as well. So let's create an img tag. And in the src, I'll just type images / and we have this image called analytics.jpg. And let's also copy this paragraph and paste it down here. And let's scroll down, and here let's type comments, and let's copy this and paste it down. Alright, that's basically it with the HTML of our tabs. Now let's go to our CSS and let's start styling this. Before that, let's open this in our browser and let's see how it looks. So I have this extension called Live Server installed in VS Code. So once you have this extension installed, you can just right click over here in the HTML and click on Open with Live Server. And here we can see that our design is being displayed over here. Now before doing anything else, let's go ahead and decrease the height of these images. So let's go back and let's go to style.css file, and let's target the image. So the image is inside this tabs container division, and in that we have this tab heading, and in that we have the icon division, and in the icon division we have the SVG. So let's target that. Let's type tabs container, tab heading, icon, SVG, and let's set the height to, let's try 30 pixels, and I think that looks alright. Right now let's start styling everything else. So first of all, let's bring everything to the center. So I'll just target the body, and let's set the display to grid and place items to center, and let's set the height to 100 viewport height, and we'll also set the margin to 0. And now let's go ahead and style the tabs container. So here we can see we have this main container division called tabs container. So let's type tabs container, and let's set the width to 800 pixels, and let's set the height to 400 pixels. And now we can see that it is in the center. Let's also set a font family of Roboto and sans serif, and we'll also add a padding of 16 pixels, and let's set the background color to white, and we'll also set the color of the text to 14213D, and let's also add a box shadow. So let's tap box shadow, and let's set the values to 0, 5 pixels, 50 pixels, -8 pixels, RGBA, 0, 0, 0, and 0.3. Let's also have rounded corners. So here let's tap border radius, and let's set it to 10 pixels. Now for all these elements, let's set the box sizing to border box so that we have the correct height and width for all the elements. So here I'll just tap tabs container, and also tabs container asterisk to select everything. And here I'll just tap box sizing and set it to border box. Right now let's style the tab heading container. So we have this division with the class of tab heading container, and in that we have all the tab headings. So here let's tap tabs container, tab heading container. Now we want all these elements to be one next to the other, so let's set the display to flex, and we'll set a background color of E63946. And now we can see we have all these elements one next to the other. Now here we can see we have added some padding for the tabs container. So that's why we cannot move this tab heading container to the edge of this tabs container division. So for that we need to add some negative margin. So let's type margin, and if you scroll up, we can see that for the tabs container we have set a padding of 16 pixels. So we have to set a margin of -16 pixels. Now we can see that we have the correct width. And let's also add border radius for the tab heading container. So let's type border radius, and let's set it to 10 pixels. Right now let's style these tab headings. So here we can see inside the tab heading container we have this tab heading division. So let's type tabs container tab heading, and for the tab heading let's set a padding of 12 pixels top and bottom and 30 pixels left and right, and let's set the cursor to pointer, and let's set the color of the text to white, and we also want to bring this icon to the center. So let's type display of flex and align items to the center, and we also need to set flex direction to column. Right now let's set the text transform to uppercase, and let's set the font weight to 800, and we'll also add a little bit of gap between the icon and this text. So here let's type gap and let's set it to 4 pixels. Now for the active tab heading we need to have a different background color. So if you go back to the HTML, here we can see for the first tab heading we have set the class of active. So here let's type tabs container tab heading dot active, and let's set the background color to 1D3557. Now here we can see that this tab heading doesn't have the border radius. So for that we need to go back to the tab heading container, and here we have set the border radius. So here we also have to type overflow and set it to hidden. And now we can see that we have the border radius for the tab heading. Right now let's style the tab content. So here we can see that we have 3 tab contents, but we need to display just one of these tab contents. So we have the active class over here. So we need to display this tab content. So let's go back to our style.css file, and let's type tabs container tab content, and by default we will set the display to none. And here let's type tabs container tab content dot active, and here we'll set the display to block. Now let's go back, and we have all the tab contents displayed over here. So let's go back to our HTML, and here we have added the active class to all the tab contents. So let's remove all of these. Let's just keep the active class for the first tab content, and now we can see that the first tab content is displayed over here. Now if I go back and remove this active class from here, and if I add it to the second tab content, and now if I go back, we can see that the second tab content is displayed over here. Now we need to have a set height for this tab content, and we also want it to be scrollable. So here we can see if you go to this tab content, we can see that we can scroll over here. So let's do that. Let's go back and let's go to the style.css file, and here for the tab content let's type overflow y and set it to scroll, and let's also set the height to 300 pixels. And now here we can see we are able to scroll. Now let's also position this correctly. So here we have a lot of gap at the bottom, and here at the top we can see that the text is also displayed over here. So we need to move this tab content down a little bit. So let's add a margin top, and let's try 30 pixels, and I think we can decrease it a little bit. Let's try 24 pixels, and I think that looks alright. Right now let's style the heading, this paragraph and this image. So let's go back, and let's type tabs container tab content h2, and let's set the font size to 40 pixels, and we'll remove the margin top, and let's set a margin bottom of 8 pixels. I think we can add a little bit of margin top, so let's try 16 pixels, and that looks alright. Right now let's increase the line height of this text. So the text is inside the content, so let's type tabs container tab content content, and let's set the line height to 2, and that looks alright. Let's also increase the width of the image to 100%. So let's type tabs container tab content content img, and let's set the width to 100%. So now we can see everything looks alright. Now in this video we will make it responsive and also add the JavaScript to add the functionality of the tabs. This is our source code, and first of all let's add a breakpoint for 900 pixels. So when the screen width is less than 900 pixels, we will add some styles. So this is basically for the tablet version. So let's tap at media and we'll set the max width to 900 pixels. And when we are less than 900 pixels, then we will set the width of the tabs container. So here we can see we have this division with the class of tabs container, and by default we have set the width to 800 pixels. We will set the width to 90% of the width of the browser. So let's tap tabs container and let's set the width to, let's try 80%. And now here we can see we have 80% width for the tabs container, and if I increase the width of the browser window, here we have 800 pixels of width, but if you decrease the width of the browser window to less than 900 pixels, then we can see that we have a width of 80% of the browser window. And we'll also position these in a different way. So if you scroll up here, for the tab heading container we have set the display to flex. So let's scroll down and let's target that selector. So let's tap tabs container, tab heading container, and here we will set the justify content property to space between. And now we can see all these headings are spread out. Now for each of the headings we will set the same width. So let's target each of the headings. So if you go back to the HTML file, here if you scroll up, here we can see inside the tab heading container we have these divisions with the class of tab heading. So let's target that. Let's tap tabs container, tab heading, and let's set the flex property to 1. Now we can see all of these headings have the same width. Right now let's add one more media query for the smartphone version. So for that let's tap at media and let's set the max width to 600 pixels. And let me just decrease the width of this browser window. And here we'll select the tabs container. And let's set the width to 90% of the screen width. And we'll also decrease the font size of this heading. So let's tap tab content. So here we can see, if you scroll down, we have this tab content, and in that we have the heading. So let's tap tab content h2 and let's set the font size to 30 pixels. And the font size is not being applied, so let's scroll up and let's see what's the problem. So here we can see we have set the font size to this selector. So here we have a more specific selector. We have tabs container and then we have tab content and h2. So we also need to add tabs container over here in the selector. So let's type tabs container and let's set the margin top to 0, or I think we can increase it a little bit. Let's try 16 pixels. And let's set the margin bottom to 8 pixels. Right now let's also decrease the font size of these headings. So let's type tabs container, tab heading, and let's set the font size to 14 pixels, and we'll also set the padding to 8 pixels. Alright, that's it with the smartphone version. Now let's go ahead and start adding the JavaScript to add the functionality. So if you go back to our HTML file, here we can see we have already added the link of the main.js file. Now in the main.js file, we need to reference some of these elements from the HTML. So we need to reference the tab heading. So here we can see we have these tab headings over here, and we need to add an active class to the active tab heading. So here we can see by default we have set the active class to the first tab heading. And we also need to reference the tab content. So here we can see we have this division with the class of tab content, and we need to add the active class to the active tab content. So right now we have set the active class to the second tab content. So I'll just delete this from here and let's add it back to the first tab content by default. So now let's go to our JavaScript file and let's reference those elements. So let's tap const tab heading, and we're going to select all the tab headings. So I'll just tap all over here. You can name this anything you want. Right, let's type document dot query selector all because we're going to select multiple elements, and here we'll type tabs container tab heading. Right now let's reference all the content, so let's type const tab content, and there are multiple contents, so I'll just type all equals document.querySelector all, and here I'll just type tabs container tab content. Right now we need to add event listeners for all these tab headings, so let's type tab heading all, and there are multiple tab headings, so we need to loop through all the tab headings, so I'll just use a for each loop, so I'll just type dot for each, and here I'll just create an arrow function, and for each of the heading I'll just call it h, and we also need to get the index of the headings, so I'll just call it I. So these are the two variables, this is the heading and this is the index. Right now let's type h.addEventListener, and let's listen for the click event, and here also we'll create an arrow function. Now when we click on any of these headings, we need to display the corresponding content, so the index will be the same for the heading and the content. So let's type tab content all, and in square brackets we need to type the index, so I'll just type I because it is the same index, dot class list dot add, and we need to add the active class, so let's type active. And now we also need to add the active class to the heading, so let's type h, which is the heading, dot class list dot add, and let's add the class active. Right now let's test it out, so let's click on the second heading, and we can see that the second heading is active and we have the second heading displayed over here, but we can see that it is displayed below the first content, and we also have the first heading active over here, so we need to reset the active state of the previous headings and content. So let's create a function for that. I'll just call it remove all active, and first of all let's remove the active class from all the content, so let's type tab content all dot for each, and let's call it C, and here I'll just type C dot class list dot remove, and here I'll just type active, and let's do the same for the tab heading, so let's type tab heading all dot for each, and I'll just call it h, and here I'll just type h dot class list dot remove active. And now we need to call the function over here in this event listener, so here I'll just type remove all active. Right now let's test it out, so let's click on the second tab heading, and we have the second content displayed over here, and let's click on the third tab heading, and we have the third content displayed over here. So everything is working alright. So that's basically how you can create responsive tabs using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Right, here I'm in the dashboard of my Blogger website. Now you can add this design into a post or a page. I just add it inside a post, so let's click on new post, and for the title I'll just type tabs design. And here the first thing you need to do is go into the HTML view. So first of all you have to click on this button and click on HTML view. By default it will be in the compose view. So once you have gone into the HTML view, you can go ahead and add the HTML, CSS and JavaScript over here. So let's add our code in this post. First of all let's add the CSS, so I'll just create a style tag, and in this we will add the CSS. So let's go to the source code, and let's go to the style.css file, and let's copy all the CSS from here. Now here we can see we have added some styles to the body as well. That's because we wanted this design to be in the center of the screen. So for the Blogger website we'll just copy from this line of code. So let's select from here till the end, and let's copy all of this to our post. So I'll just paste it over here inside the style tag, and after that let's paste the HTML. So let's go outside the style tag, and let's go back to our source code, and let's go to the HTML file, and let's copy all this HTML from here. So let's start from here, and we'll go all the way till this line of code over here, and let's copy all of this HTML and paste it over here. Now here we can see in our HTML we have all the content of the tabs, so you can go ahead and make the customizations over here. So this is the icon, so if you want to change the icon you can just add your SVG over here, and this is the text of the heading. So here we have bookmarks, so this is the heading, and these are the three tabs, And then after that we have the content. So we have this heading over here. This is this heading right here. And then we have the content. You can just change the content to whatever you want. You can also add images like we did over here. If you scroll down, this is the second content. And here you can see we have added the image over here. And in the same way you have the third content over here. So you can make customizations as you wish. Now the last thing we need to do is add the JavaScript. So let's go back to our post and let's create a script tag for that. And in the script tag we will add the JavaScript. So let's go back to our source code and let's go to the main.js file and let's copy all this JavaScript from here and let's paste it over here inside the script tag. Now the last thing we need to do is change the URL of the image. So right now the image URL is set to images/analytics.jpg. So we don't have this folder called images in our Blogger website. So we have to first of all upload the image somewhere and get the link and paste it over here. So I'll just upload the link over here. I'll just make some space over here and let's click on this button called insert image and let's click on upload from computer and let's click on choose files. And here we have the image. So let's select the image and let's click on open. And let's select the image and let's click on select. And I'll just select the original size and let's click on OK. Now here we have the code for the image. Now let's copy the link of the image. So here we have the anchor tag and in that we have the href attribute. Here we have the link of the image. So I'll just copy this link from here. And let's paste it over here instead of this link. And now you can go ahead and delete this code from here. Alright, that's it with our post. So let's click on publish and confirm. And here we can see our post has been published. Let's click on view and let's see whether everything works alright. So if you scroll down, we can see that we have the tab displayed over here. And if I click on the next tab, we have the content of the next tab displayed over here. And then we have the third tab. So everything is working alright. Let's take a look at the responsiveness. So let's decrease the width of the browser window. And we can see that it works alright. We don't have any problems. Alright, so that's basically how you can add tabs design to your Blogger website. Right, here's the source code, and the first thing we need to do is we need to create radio buttons for the tabs. So we're going to change these tab headings into radio buttons so that we can click on one of these tabs at a time. So let's go ahead and create input fields. So I'll just tap input, and for the type we will set it to radio. And we'll also give it a class of tab radio. And we also need to give it an ID. So let's set the ID to tab 1. And we will have the first tab checked by default. So let's tap checked over here. And now let's do the same for the other tab headings as well. So I'll just duplicate this 2 more times. And the type will be radio and the class will also be tab radio. And we'll change the ID to tab 2 and tab 3. And we'll just remove the checked from here. We just have the checked for the first radio button. So if you go back to our design, we have 3 radio buttons over here, but we cannot see it clearly because of these tab headings over here. So let's go back and let's change these divisions into labels for the input fields. So let's change this to label, and we'll have the class as tab heading. And if you scroll down, here we have the ending tag as label. We'll do the same for the other tab headings as well. So let's change this into a label, and let's do the same for this division. So let's change this into a label. Now we also need to add a for attribute for these labels. So for the first label we need to add a for attribute, and we need to set the value to the first ID. So here we can see for the first radio button we have this ID of tab 1. So here we have to type tab 1, and in the same way let's go to the second label, and here we need to type for tab 2, and in the same way for the third label we need to type for tab 3. And now let's go back to our design. Now here we can see we have these radio buttons displayed over here, and if I right click over here and click on inspect, here we can see these are all labels. Now here we can see that all the radio buttons are active. We need to just have one radio button active at a time. So for that let's go back to our code, and we need to add a name attribute for that. So let's type name, and we need to add the same name for all these 3 radio buttons. So let's add a name of tab heading. I'll just copy this and Let's paste it down here and here as well. Now if we go back to our design, and if we click on the second tab heading, we have the second radio button selected. And if I click on the third tab heading, we have the third radio button selected. So we have just one radio button selected at a time. Now the next thing we will do is we will remove the JavaScript. So let's scroll down, and here we have the link for the JavaScript file. So I'll just remove this line of code. I'll just comment this. And now if I click on any of these tab headings, nothing happens because the JavaScript is removed. And the next thing we will do is we'll remove the active classes from all these elements. So here we can see for the first tab content we have the active class. So I'll just remove that. And here for the first tab heading we have this active class. Let's remove that as well. And now we can see that the content is not being displayed, and we also don't have the background color for the active tab heading. So let's fix it right now. So let's go back to our style.css file, and if you scroll down, here we can see that we have this active class, and here we are adding a background color. So what we need to do is we need to check whether any of these radio buttons are active or checked, and if the radio button is checked, then we need to add this background color. So for that, let's remove this selector from here. Here we will type tabs container, and then we need to add the radio button. So for the radio button we have a class of tab radio. So let's type .tab radio, and then we need to type :nth child, and we'll select the first child over here. So this will select the first radio button, and here we need to check whether it is checked. So let's type :checked. And now if you go back to our HTML file, here we can see that we have this division with the class of tab heading container, and in that we have the tab heading division. Now we have to select this division over here, and for that we need to use this tilde symbol over here. You can find this key right below the escape key on the keyboard, and then we need to add the name of this division, which is tab heading container. So let's type .tab heading container, and in that we have the tab heading division, and we need to select the first tab heading. So here we can see there are 3 tab headings. So we need to select the first tab heading. So for that we need to type :nth child, and here we need to type 1. And now if you go back to our design, here we can see that the first tab heading is active, and if I click on the second tab heading, the first one is not active anymore. So let's do the same for the other tab headings as well. Let's go back and let's copy this code from here, and let's paste it 2 more times, and here we'll just change this to 2, and for this one let's change it to 3. Now let's go back, and now we can see that everything is working alright. Now we'll just hide these radio buttons from here. So here we'll just type tabs container, tab radio, and let's set the display to none. Right now it's time for us to add the content. So let's go back, and here we can see we are adding the active class to the tab content. So I'll just delete this from here, and here we need to do almost the same thing as this selector right here. So we need to type tab radio :nth child of 1 and tilde symbol, and here before that we need to type :checked. So this will only apply for the active radio button. Now if we go back to the index.html file, here we can see we have this division with the class of tab content container, and in that we have the tab content. So let's type tab content container, and in that we have the tab content, and here we need to select the first tab content. So let's type :nth child 1, and we need to do the same for the other tab contents as well. So let's copy this and let's paste it 2 more times, and here I'll just change this to 2, and we'll just change this to 3. And now if you go back to our design, we can see that the first content is displayed over here, and if I click on the second tab, we have the second content displayed over here, and in the same way we have the third content displayed over here. So everything is working alright. Now all of this is working without any JavaScript. We are just using CSS. Let's also check the responsive version. So the responsive version is also working alright. So that's basically how you can create responsive tabs using pure CSS. Now adding this to your Blogger website is really simple. I'll just show it to you real quick. So let's go to the Blogger dashboard, And here I have already added the design of the JavaScript version. So if I click on this post, here we can see the code. I have already explained to you how to add this in the previous video. I will leave the link in the description of this video. Now here we need to make the changes to our tab heading. So let's go back to our code and let's go to the index.html file. And let's copy everything from here till here. And let's paste it over here. I'll just delete everything from here till here, just before the tab content container starts. And let's paste the code that we just copied. And we also need to remove the active class. So if we scroll down, here for the first content we have the active class. So let's remove that. And now we need to remove the JavaScript. So I'll just go over here and I'll just delete this script tag from here. And we also need to add the updated CSS. So let's scroll up. So this is all the CSS that we had added. So I'll just delete all of this from here. And let's add our updated CSS. Let's go back to our code. And let's go to the style.css file and let's copy everything from here till here. And let's copy this and paste it over here. Alright, now let's click on update and let's see whether it works. Let's go back to our dashboard and let's click on view. And here we can see that the tabs are displayed. Let's click on the second tab heading and we have the second content displayed over here. Let's click on the third tab heading and everything is working alright. So that's basically how you can add the CSS-based tabs to your Blogger website. Alright, so that's it for this video. I will leave the link of the source code in the description. And if you have any doubts, you can ask in the comments below. And if you like this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.